The Republican Party is currently steaming at full speed toward an electoral iceberg that threatens to completely sink their chances of controlling the United States Congress after the election this November. And the man who is supposed to be steering their ship, the presumed leader of their political movement, has, by all available evidence, already abandoned his post in favor of the most absurd and superficial distractions imaginable. We are witnessing a catastrophic failure of political leadership at a moment when working people across the United States of America are crying out for genuine solutions to their daily struggles. According to a comprehensive national poll released just last week, an overwhelming majority of the country has recognized this leadership vacuum. More than two-thirds of American voters state clearly and unequivocally that Donald Trump is not focused enough on the problems that most Americans face every single day. Let that sink in. More than 66% of the electorate looks at the presumptive nominee and sees a man who is entirely disconnected from their reality. So, where exactly is his focus? What is occupying the mind of the man who demands to be returned to the highest office in the land, while families struggle to pay for basic groceries, navigate skyrocketing housing costs, and manage crippling healthcare bills? The reality of his daily preoccupations is as absurd as it is deeply concerning for the future of the nation. Before we dive into the specific bizarre obsessions that are distracting the former president from the realities of the American public, and examine how this disconnect is fracturing his own party, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. We rely on your direct support to continue producing serious, independent, and fact-driven investigative journalism that holds powerful people accountable. Please subscribe now so we can keep bringing you the exhaustive reporting and the critical stories that truly matter. According to deeply sourced reporting from Axios, a source described as a Trump insider has revealed that the former president now concentrates almost entirely on bizarre, superficial hobbies. These hobbies serve a very specific, carefully constructed psychological purpose. They are designed to insulate him and distract him from his terrible polling numbers, a devastating political reality about which he is said to be in complete and total denial. Rather than face the pressing economic and social issues of our time, rather than formulate policy or address the concerns of the voters who are abandoning him, Donald Trump frequently pivots to showing his visitors architectural renderings of a massive new White House ballroom. He displays a highly detailed model of a planned triumphal arch, a monument to his own ego that he dreams of erecting in the nation's capital, seemingly styling himself after ancient Roman emperors or European monarchs rather than a public servant of a democratic republic. He spends an exorbitant amount of his time showcasing the new design and paint schemes for his private Boeing jet, often referred to as his personal Air Force One. He continuously touts his grandiose and completely unfounded plans for reshaping Dulles International Airport, and he obsesses endlessly over the precise construction details of a new helipad being built on the South Lawn. These are not the actions of a political leader preparing to tackle systemic inflation, crumbling infrastructure, housing shortages, or escalating global instability. These are the actions of an emperor focused entirely on the drapery and the aesthetics of his palace, completely ignoring the fact that the citizens outside the palace walls are struggling to afford the absolute basic necessities of life. It is a stunning dereliction of duty, even for a candidate who is not currently holding public office, because it signals exactly what his priorities would be if he were to somehow return to the presidency. He is building scale models of triumphal arches while the economic foundation of the American middle class continues to crack and splinter under the weight of an unforgiving, top-heavy economy. What the American people actually want is for this deeply flawed, ridiculous economy to finally deliver for them, rather than delivering exclusively for Donald Trump and his inner circle of billionaire mega donors. It is abundantly clear to anyone paying attention that Donald Trump wants those billionaires inside his newly designed ballroom, drinking expensive champagne and writing massive, unregulated checks to his various political action committees. What he absolutely does not want to do is engage in the hard, complex, and unglamorous work of addressing the suffocating cost of living for Americans who are crying out for immediate legislative help. When you ask why gasoline is so incredibly expensive at the pump, or why a starter home is completely out of reach for a young family working two full-time jobs, the answers require serious policy discussions and legislative compromises. Instead of offering any semblance of policy, the former president offers vanity projects and hollow rhetoric, and the deflection does not end with his obsession over architectural models and private jets. When confronted with the unavoidable reality of his political vulnerability and his plummeting approval ratings among independent voters, he absolutely refuses to look in the mirror. If you ask Donald Trump, who is genuinely responsible for the perilous sinking position the Republican Party currently finds itself in, his answer is astonishingly narcissistic and entirely predictable. He firmly believes he has done absolutely nothing wrong. He views himself entirely as the victim of circumstances, and he is now actively trying to shift the blame to the very Republican lawmakers he is supposed to be leading into the upcoming November elections. In a recent, highly revealing statement, Donald Trump articulated his current political mindset with a chilling and detached clarity. He stated, and I will quote him directly to ensure there is no misunderstanding of his position. He said, "If I do not run, will those people go out and vote? And that is the one thing I cannot say. I am going to ask them to. The question is, will they vote? Because a lot of them are very angry at Republicans, to be honest with you. Why is that? I do not know. I mean, they are angry at Republicans, but they are not angry at me, but they are angry at Republicans." End quote. I want you to listen very carefully to the staggering level of delusion and self-preservation embedded in those exact words. They are not angry at me. This is the captain of the political lifeboat actively drilling massive holes in the hull, watching the freezing water rush over the ankles of his crew, and then loudly blaming the other passengers for the impending disaster. Donald Trump is the one holding the match and lighting the fire that is currently consuming the Republican platform, yet he immediately points his finger at the people standing directly next to him. Now, to be entirely fair to the historical record and the facts of the matter, he has had a massive amount of assistance in failing the American public. The Republican members of the House of Representatives have repeatedly, over the course of many years, cast deciding votes that prioritize corporate interests, continue disastrous foreign conflicts, and abandon working families in their most desperate hours of need. There is certainly plenty of blame to go around for the current state of the nation. But the absolute stubborn refusal of the party leader to take even a microscopic fraction of responsibility for the electoral backlash is exactly why moderate and independent voters are turning away in absolute disgust. This brings us directly to the actual physical battlegrounds where the future of the United States of America will be decided in the coming months and years. While the national mainstream media remains hopelessly fixated on the daily circus surrounding the presidential race, and while millions of dollars are poured into the high-profile, closely watched contests in the United States Senate, the real consequential war for the future of American democracy is happening much further down the ballot. We are currently in a highly volatile, deeply critical electoral cycle. It mirrors the tumultuous years following 2006 and 2008, when the political landscape began to radically fracture and the early seeds of extreme ideological movements began to take root. To truly understand how the American people can untangle the massive structural mess created by this top-down failure of leadership, we have to look far beyond the daily spectacle in Washington. If you appreciate this level of detailed, uncompromising analysis that intentionally cuts through the superficial political noise and examines the underlying structural forces shaping our government, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel right now. Your subscription ensures that we can continue to provide this kind of rigorous, uninterrupted investigative reporting as we head deeper into this absolutely critical election cycle. The comprehensive strategy necessary to counter this systemic political dysfunction is being laid out clearly by experienced political organizers on the ground, such as Ben Wickler, the former chairman of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin and the author of the very timely new book titled "This is the Plan: How to End the Meltdown of America and Save Democracy." What organizers like Wickler understand on a fundamental level, and what the traditional political establishment in Washington frequently forgets to their own detriment, is that sustainable elections are almost never won from the top down. They are won from the bottom up, neighborhood by neighborhood, precinct by precinct. When you look closely at critical battleground states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and others that are sitting right there in the electoral bubble, you see a consistently high level of civic engagement and voter interest that frequently completely eclipses the top of the ticket. In recent primary elections across the country, we have documented a vastly larger number of Democrats turning out to vote in the primaries than Republicans. That surging enthusiasm is not necessarily about blindly supporting a presidential nominee. It is driven by a highly unified, deeply rooted desire for a fair economy that actually delivers for working people, not just for the ultra-wealthy elite sitting in their penthouses. It is driven by a desperate desire for a country that does not plunge recklessly into unnecessary, devastating wars that not only cost thousands of precious human lives, but simultaneously make everyone else's daily lives significantly more expensive and unstable. But perhaps most importantly of all, this grassroots energy is driven by a stark recognition of where political power is actually wielded and manipulated in the United States. The real, unchecked power in the American political system heavily resides in the state legislative chambers. As much as the national media directs your attention to the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, it is actually the state assemblies and the state senates that will definitively determine the future trajectory of this country. Why is that the case? Because we are currently trapped in a deeply cynical political season where Donald Trump and his closest allies have tried to aggressively initiate a massive nationwide gerrymandering war. Their explicit goal is to seize absolute control of the legislative process for the foreseeable future, rendering the actual popular vote effectively meaningless in key districts. They understand mathematically that if they cannot win over the public based on the popularity or the merit of their ideas, they must fundamentally rewrite the rules of the game to guarantee their own victory. In a highly contested state like Wisconsin, there is now a genuine, measurable chance for Democrats to break the conservative stronghold and win a majority in both the state assembly and the state senate. The exact same high stakes dynamic is currently playing out in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, in New Hampshire, and in Nevada. In every single one of these states, there is the real potential for a complete political trifecta, where one party controls the governorship and both legislative chambers. Even if you look at a state like Iowa, which has strongly looked like an untouchable red state for quite some time, the political ground is shifting. There is a legitimate, viable path for organizers to flip 3 seats in the House of Representatives, capture the governorship, take the office of the Attorney General, secure a United States Senate seat, and flip a massive ton of state legislative seats. Why do these seemingly obscure down-ballot races matter so much to the survival of the republic? Because these are the elected officials who play a gigantic, incredibly outsized role in setting the rules of the road for the crucial elections in 2028 and well beyond. If you genuinely want to protect the structural integrity of American democracy right now, today, you have to look closely at the local down-ballot races that virtually no one in the national media is paying close attention to. An unexpected overperformance in a single state legislative race could completely change who has the authority to write the rules regarding how American elections function, how ballots are counted, and who is allowed to vote. You must actively protect the system from being rigged, which is exactly what the Republican Party is currently attempting to do at the national legislative level with bills like the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. They are actively using the legislative process to erect unnecessary barriers to basic civic participation, systematically attempting to disenfranchise millions of eligible voters under the false guise of ensuring election security. It is a highly calculated, deeply cynical, and fundamentally undemocratic strategy. It is designed to compensate for the fact that their presumptive nominee is spending his time admiring blueprints for a triumphal arch instead of actually speaking to the real, pressing economic needs of the American people. The contrast between these two political approaches could not possibly be more stark. On one side, you have a massive political movement completely paralyzed by the vanity, the ego, and the endless delusions of a single man who utterly refuses to acknowledge his own terrible polling data, who consistently blames his own loyal party members for his undeniable failures, and who brazenly prioritizes the architectural blueprints for a triumphal arch over the basic economic survival of his own constituents. On the other side, you have a relentless bottom-up political movement fueled by the genuine energy that everyday people are bringing to their local primaries. As we have seen clearly in Michigan and Wisconsin, that high level of energy does not just mysteriously evaporate when the primary election is over. The people who are deeply engaged right now will roll right into the general election. They will be actively volunteering, they will be talking to their neighbors on their front porches, and they will be turning out votes at a massive level that we have simply never seen in a midterm or general election environment before. The iceberg is directly in front of them, and yet the supposed captain absolutely refuses to acknowledge the freezing water filling the lower decks. The political consequences of this profound institutional failure will continue to unfold long after the ballots are counted this November. If you value this type of unvarnished, fact-driven investigative journalism, please subscribe to our channel before you leave. Your subscription ensures we can relentlessly pursue these vital stories and hold the highest levels of power fully accountable to the public.